Hello everyone, how's it going? And welcome to the release of Ornn. This big Baron Lane tank is finally on the Rift, and I'm going to be giving you all an in-depth look at Ornn and the best beginner's guide, so you know everything about the champion before you head into your first game. Whether you play with him, whether you play against him, whether you play as Ornn, I'll show you everything that you need to know about the champion: abilities, builds, combos, everything like that. I've already had a little bit of a teaser for Ornn. I've already just given him a little bit of a try, and this champion, I mean, he was already broken in PC League before for a very long time. I'm sure people who play PC League remember all the memes and everything of Ornn being this tank assassin, high damage dealer, all at the same time, and I think it's going to be the exact same on Wild Rift. First up though, let's take a look at the abilities. First ability we're going to be looking at is his passive, which is Living Forge. So Ornn can spend gold to forge items anywhere on the map. This passive is going to be insane on Wild Rift. The reason being is that in Wild Rift you get so much passive gold, and you just get so much gold in general for Wild Rift, and laning phase is so important. The games are very quick. Laning phase is always going to be important, and allowing you to forge items anywhere on the map is going to be huge. You could just walk up to lane, you'll be level 1, level 2, you can trade and do all your normal stuff, and then you could just go back to your tower, forge an item. You don't even need to go back to base. You could just heal up from the honey fruit, you could just forge another item, and then you're already at an advantage. And that means you'll be able to trade against champions, easily try and push the lane, try and roam around to try and help your jungler. This passive is going to be so strong in Wild Rift. It was already quite strong in PC League, but I think because PC League is a bit of a slower game, it's not really that effective, but in Wild Rift it's going to be super effective. Ornn can gain additional bonus health, armor, and magic resist from all sources. So when building Ornn as a tank, you're going to get bonus health, bonus armor, and bonus magic resist, depending on obviously what you build. But again, just makes him a big, massive, beefy tank that he needs to be. This is an interesting part. This is different to PC League. Upon reaching level 7, crafting items with Living Forge grants a nearby ally 5 stacks of Living Forge. Now, I guess as far as I'm aware, 5 stacks of Living Forge means that they can use Living Forge 5 times, so they can craft items out of base 5 times. I'm guessing that's what that means. This is a new passive. This is not even on PC League. Allowing them to purchase items anywhere on the map. This buff stacks up to 15 times, and this effect can be triggered every 3 levels. So it's really interesting. So even though you want to build your items as soon as possible, and you just want to build items pretty much anywhere on the map, you kind of want to, you know, stand next to your allies as well when you're crafting items after level 7, because it will give them 5 stacks of Living Forge. That means they can buy items out of base, and they don't need to go back to base. It's going to be really powerful on, you know, junglers. Junglers could just walk to your lane, for example, after level 7. You can craft an item, and they can craft their item as well. Like, they don't even need to leave base, which will give them maybe priority towards objectives, or maybe allow them to just, you know, gank more often or anything like that. This passive is going to be very interesting. Obviously the Living Forge passive doesn't have the upgraded items in Wild Rift, so I'm really interested to see how the passive will work, how the new passive will work compared to PC League. But yeah, all you can see here is you can see that the shop on the left hand side is currently an anvil. This means that I can purchase an item out of base. When I purchase the item, it has a little bit of a duration, or a little bit of a timer. Now, if it's the same as PC League, this can be stopped. So when you're playing against Ornn, you can actually stop Ornn from crafting items if you land a crowd control on them, say like a Lux binding or a Dark binding. You can actually stop Ornn from crafting, so that's something to keep in mind, a bit of a tip there. But yeah, as you can see, you just build the item, boom, and it's built. And then you can see, because of my arrow there that's on the target, the ally dummy target, that means that that target dummy now has 5 stacks of Living Forge. That means that my ally can now craft 5 items when out of base. So really cool passive. I think that's gonna be very interesting. I wonder if you could you just sell an item? And oh, okay, you can't sell an item out of base, so you have to go back to sell an item. I was thinking like maybe you could sell an item and buy Guardian Angel or something in the middle of a team fight, or like craft it in the middle of a team fight. I think that'll be very, very broken. But yeah, overall, pretty cool passive. I'm going to make him super tanky. And again, the level 7 thing, crafting the ally champions, is going to be very, very interesting to see how that is going to work out. Right, now let's go on to the actual abilities. The first ability is Volcanic Rupture, his first ability. So Ornn slams the ground, creating a fissure, dealing physical damage and slowing by a percentage for 2 seconds. A pillar of rock forms at the fissure's end after 4 seconds. The fissure stops shortly after hitting an enemy champion. That last part is actually super important. So when you actually use Volcanic Rupture, if you just use this first ability, it has a range and it will just stop at the end of the range, and then after a few seconds you can see that a little pillar pops up. However, if you use this next to a champion, or if you use this actually on a champion and it hits the champion, it will stop just behind them. It doesn't matter what the range is, it will always stop just behind them. As you can see there, it doesn't matter what my range is, the champion will actually stop the whole cast of your first ability. So it will always go just behind. Same here, it will just go behind. Even if there's a target dummy over there, it will go just behind them. So it's actually really important for Ornn to make sure that you realize this and you don't just like walk past the pillar, because you could use your pillar in melee range and then use your E and then, oh, I'm you know, completely out of the fight. So you need to make sure that you understand that if an Ornn uses his first ability, he's always going to have the pillar behind you, so you can easily try and flash away or anything like that, but it's not going to have the full duration. The full duration or the full cast or the full range is only going to be available when you're using it and not hitting an enemy champion. You could use this ability as like a zoning tool. I wonder how well this ability is going to be if you use it as a zoning tool like here, or maybe over here. You can use it as a bit of a zoning tool, and if someone walks up, you can just use your third ability and just knock up like that. I think that'd be very interesting. That's one of the basic combos though, is using your first ability and then your third ability. But the most important thing with this little bit of a combo is that you need to wait until your first ability automatically uses the pillar, or the pillar comes up, because if you use your first ability and the third ability, it will be way too early. You need to wait for a few seconds and then use your third ability, and then you'll be able to knock up. So you just first ability, wait a few seconds, and then use your third ability, and there you go. If you have a timer in your head, if you just think to yourself, you just go 1, 2, 3, and then you can knock up. You know, you can just time the seconds in your head. And if you time the seconds in your head, then you'll be able to easily knock up with Ornn with his first ability. So very cool, very basic combo that I just showed you there for Ornn. Probably going to be the most powerful combo, I think, during fights and also during laning phase, because you can trade very easily when you knock up with his second ability with that as well, which is going to be Bellows Breath. So Ornn stomps forward unstoppably. Unstoppably is really important because unstoppable means that you can basically be immune to any crowd control. So if any sort of crowd control comes towards you, like a Lee Sin kick or a Thresh hook or anything like that, any sort of hook or any sort of ability that will move on, you can time your second ability and be immune to any sort of crowd control. So timing that is going to be very important for Ornn players when playing Ornn. While breathing fire, dealing % maximum health damage over 0.75 seconds. Enemies hit by the final bout of the flame become brittle for a few seconds. Brittle means that you'll be able to deal additional damage against enemy champions. Immobilizer effects on brittle targets have their duration increased by 30% and deal additional maximum health damage, and also attacks against brittle targets knock them up and knock them back, dealing additional damage. So when you use your second ability, you're going to be applying brittle. You get an auto attack to deal more damage, knock them up, knock them back, and just, you know, easily trade against them in the laning phase. You deal a minimum of a little bit of magic damage to minions and a maximum of a little bit of damage to jungle monsters, and immobilizing deals a maximum of 250 damage to monsters. I'm actually curious to see if Ornn jungle would be a thing. I don't think Ornn jungle would be a thing, but I could see Ornn jungle being quite strong, maybe because of the passive. You can just walk to the lane, you could just craft an item, stand near like an ADC or something like that, and have them buy an item, but you know, without going back to base. So I can see that maybe Ornn jungle might be a little bit of a thing. But your second ability, you can see you don't have the longest range of your second ability. But it's just simple. You just breathe fire, and you can see the brittle stack is just above the target dummy. That's how you know if the brittle stack has been applied. So you just use your second ability, the brittle stack has been applied, so you just auto attack, and as you can see, you knock them back and you deal additional percentage health damage. So I think it's going to be, again, very, very powerful during the laning phase. You can use your first ability and then second ability, and by the time you actually use the second ability, you will be able to use your third ability to knock them up. This is such a powerful combo during the laning phase. You just first ability is to instantly use the second ability, and then your third ability will work as a mobilized effect, because you will knock up to actually proc brittle. So you can actually use brittle for the first ability as well. So for example, if I was to breathe fire with my second ability, I can then use my first ability, and because my first ability, okay, it didn't knock up there, unfortunately, but if my first ability knocks up, then it actually procs the brittle. So any sort of immobilized effect that Ornn does, it will proc the brittle. So you can just use first ability into second ability into third ability, and as you can see, I don't need to auto attack, and it will instantly proc the brittle because I immobilize them and I knocked them up. So very, very powerful ability, again, that will just allow you to deal more damage and trade easier during the laning phase. Ornn's third ability is Searing a Charge. So Ornn charges, dealing physical damage, and it goes up depending on your bonus armor and magic resist. If an Ornn rams into terrain, it creates a shockwave that knocks up enemies for 1.25 seconds and applies the same damage to those in the area. Ornn's charge destroys magma pillars and terrain created by enemies and reduces the cooldown of the skill by 25%. It's actually pretty interesting because Ornn can actually destroy things like Jarvan Ultimate, because Jarvan Ultimate actually works as a terrain. So if you get stuck by a Jarvan Ultimate, all you have to do is use your third ability. Sorry, excuse me. All you have to do is use your third ability, and it will actually destroy the Jarvan terrain. It doesn't destroy whole of it, it just destroys part of it. So you can actually walk out of Jarvan ulti, or even save your team from Jarvan ulti just by destroying the terrain. But as it mentions, you can knock up when you hit terrain, and your terrain works as your first ability, because your first ability acts as a pillar. So your third ability, if you just normally use it, you just charge forward and deal a little bit of damage. That's all you do. But if you hit any sort of terrain, this could be on walls or anything, boom, you can see the area there that it knocks up. You can use this on any sort of wall, any sort of terrain, and this will catch a lot of enemies off guard. And I mean a lot of enemies. And you kind of use your first ability as a little bit of a bait. So for example, I could use my first ability over here that can maybe bait the target dummy to try and move away from the pillar, but then I can use my third ability to dash onto the wall instead and still land a knock-up. This means when you land a knock-up, you can easily use your second ability and easily proc brittle straight away. Your second ability is used so effectively just before you hit crowd control. So as soon as the crowd control hits, you use your second ability, and because the duration is going to hit because they've been knocked up, you're going to easily be able to auto attack afterwards to deal that extra % health damage. So again, very powerful to make sure you combo your abilities at the right time. But most of the time you want to save your Searing Charge just to try and knock up enemies against terrain. You can use it as an escape tool as well during laning phase. That can also be very powerful. Then we have the ultimate. My god, this ultimate, this is probably, I would say, the best engage ultimate in the game. This ultimate offers crowd control, it offers damage, it has everything that you need in a champion, especially a tank like Ornn. So we have Call of the Forge God. Ornn summons a massive lava elemental, which stampedes towards him, dealing magic damage and applying brittle for a few seconds. The elemental also slows for up to 60% for 2 seconds based on Ornn's level. Ornn can recast this to dash with a headbutt, and if the dash hits the elemental, he directs the empowered directs it and empowers it, causing it to knock up the first champion for 1 second and subsequent champions for 0.5 seconds. This is such a powerful ultimate. And you know what I didn't realize with the Ornn ultimate? When you use the old Ornn ultimate, the map zooms out. Like, the map zooms out. You can see, watch this. Watch when I use this ultimate. Look at this. Look how much the Ornn ultimate, even when you use this, look at this, look. The map zooms out. Look how much you can see. Boom. This ultimate is absolutely insane. So there's two parts to the ultimate. So you have your first ability, first part of the ultimate, which actually is really important because it applies brittle and it also slows the enemy champions. Like I said, this is used as such a great engage tool, whether it's in Dragon Pit, whether you're sieging through mid lane. So important to use this ultimate anytime an engage is about to happen. So you got the first part of the ability, as it says, it slows the enemies and applies brittle. So you can just use your ultimate and just auto attack the brittle if you want to, but that's not the best way to use the Ornn ultimate. You have to remember every single time to reactivate your ultimate. I can't think of a single time where you wouldn't want to reactivate your ultimate, but you have to do this manually. There's no automatic cast or anything like that in Wild Rift for Ornn. You have to make sure you use this ability a second time, and to use it a second time you need to force the direction, boom, and there you go. So you need to make sure that you actually use your second cast of the ultimate to basically headbutt the Searing Ram. Now, if you use this in another direction, this can actually work as like this. You can redirect this into any direction you want to. You just have to make sure that the ram is right where Ornn is. So you can actually use this as like an engage tool from behind. So say, for example, you're about to just, you know, go into a Baron fight. I don't know why you wouldn't use the ultimate this way, but you could use the ultimate the opposite way if you want to, and then use it again to then go towards the Baron. I mean, that's a cool way to use it. But again, like I said, every single time you use Ornn ultimate, you need to make sure you use the Ornn ultimate the second time to make sure you land the knock up. And again, because knock up is a crowd control, you will proc brittle. So you can use some crazy thing like Ornn ultimate, proc the brittle into second ability, into proc the brittle again. It's so powerful to go for this sort of combo and to proc brittle multiple times, because the more times you proc brittle from your second ability and also your ultimate, the more damage you're going to be dealing with Ornn. Now let's talk a little bit about combos. As I mentioned already, there's a few combos that you can go with Ornn. There's like some crazy combos where you can probably try and get like triple brittle procs or something like that, with how your ultimate and how your abilities work. But I'll just show you the basic combos because that's all you kind of really need to learn with Ornn. And one of the basic combos is one of the combos I've already showed. It's your first ability and then your third ability, and then when you knock up, you use your second ability and then you proc brittle with your auto attack. This is going to be your standard combo that you're going to use during laning phase, during team fights, during skirmishes, anything like that. You can also just walk up and just use your second ability if you want to. You can just walk up, use your second ability, auto attack, use your first ability, auto attack again, and then use your third ability. You can use this combo in multiple different ways. It kind of depends on the situation during the laning phase. You know, do you want to use your first ability to try and engage, or is the enemy champion close enough where you can use your second ability and proc brittle? I think that's the most, that's the question that you need to think about to yourself. Is your brittle going to land on the enemy champion? If it is, then you could just use it. You can just use it and you can just auto attack. You don't need to use your other abilities. You can save it to try and combo after you use brittle. Or do you want to try and engage, and then when you engage, then you can proc brittle afterwards, which again is going to be your first ability into your third ability, into using your second ability to proc brittle into auto attack. That's going to be pretty much a basic combo. Like I said, there are different ways that you can use combos. So you can use like your ultimate into first ability into second ability, and then ultimate into third ability. Okay, I accidentally activated my ultimate twice there, which was kind of my mistake. This is kind of a really crazy combo where you can proc brittle multiple times. So you can use your ultimate into first ability, second ability, ultimate again, auto attack, and then you can use your other abilities. If I put this on a 0-second cooldown, it will probably make it a little bit easier for me, so I can actually know what abilities are being used. So it's just ultimate, first ability, second ability, ultimate again, auto attack, knock up into auto attack again. There you go. Really strong combo that you can use multiple brittle procs and get multiple stacks on brittles. That means you can auto attack, deal more damage, and land the crowd control as well, which means that you can actually combo your CC as well at the same time. So you can like use your ultimate into first ability, and then you just use ultimate into third ability like this, and you can combo your CC as well if you really want to, like double the knock up, means double the duration of the CC, which is going to be very difficult for carries to try and escape from. Now, the last thing I want to take a look at for this, or not the last thing, the second last thing, is taking a look at the leveling order for Ornn. So at level 1 for Ornn, you always want to go for your second ability. You can use your first ability as well at range. If you're against a ranged champion, then your first ability is going to be quite good, because your first ability can be used as a poke tool during a laning phase and can also be used to farm minions if you really want to. But your second ability is so powerful. This gives you a lot of great trading potential during the laning phase at level 1. But again, this is a risky level 1 to go. You don't have to go for your second ability at level 1. You can also go for your first ability and just play more passive. Then level 2, you want to go for your second ability if you haven't done already, or if you went for your second ability first, you could just go for your first ability second. You can actually combo your first ability, your second ability quite well, because your first ability slows, so it means that it allows you more time to try and land your second ability and try and stack that brittle and try and auto attack with using brittle. So use your first ability to slow into your second ability when they're slowed, and then you can auto attack to use brittle, because that little pillar behind is going to make it very difficult for any champions to move around and try and escape from. Then level 3, you want to go for your third ability. Your third ability is going to be very powerful when you have all your abilities available, and then you want to max your this is interesting. I mean, you kind of want to max your second ability, but at the same time, I had a look at it and I was like, maxing your second ability only really reduces the cooldown, which to be fair is very powerful for Ornn. I think reducing the ability on reducing your second ability's cooldown is actually going to be very important, because this is kind of your main damage source with Ornn. Your brittle and your second ability is very powerful, so reducing the cooldown is actually going to be very powerful, but it only actually increases the maximum monster damage and also the minion damage. It doesn't actually increase the damage of the ability itself. So it's very interesting. So maybe you can go for like your first ability could be used as the first leveling order, but again, it's a skill shot and the cooldown doesn't really mean too much, and the base damage also doesn't really mean too much, because I mean, you can use it during poke during the laning phase, but I think reducing the cooldown of your second ability, even though it might not seem effective, I think is definitely going to be the way to go. Obviously, make sure you level up your ultimate when possible, and then you want to go for your third ability. Your third ability reduce the cooldown, so it means you can use your mobility more often, and you can actually knock up more often with our third ability, and it also increases the base damage. And then you want to max your first ability last, and then that's pretty much everything with Ornn. That's all the abilities, combos, leveling order, and everything. I'm going to quickly show you my go-to build for Ornn as well. This is going to be such a powerful build that you need to run on Ornn. The basic build is okay, it's not bad. It recommends to go for like Sunfire as a first item, which I think is like okay, it's not the best. But the one item you want to go for Ornn is Iceborne Gauntlet. This item is so powerful for Ornn. That AoE slow is going to be so powerful. You saw there when I was using my abilities, especially when you're proccing brittle, you knock them back, you deal more damage, and you get to slow them. So that means you can slow them and walk up and auto attack more. You can use your first ability and then auto attack, and it makes it really difficult for them to escape the pillar, so you can knock up. Iceborne Gauntlet is just so powerful. Maximum health, armor. You get a little bit of mana as well, because Ornn can be a little bit mana hungry during a laning phase. Depending, you know, we'll have to test him out when we try him. And then ability haste, and you also have the Spellblade passive, which means you're going to be dealing more damage. So you just use your second ability, auto attack. It's going to create the icy field and deal more damage because of the Spellblade passive. So this is by far going to be the go-to first item for Ornn. And then after Iceborne Gauntlet, you just want to build towards tank. Sunfire Aegis is really good, because you're going to be right next to enemy champions all the time, whether it be to knock up, whether it be to stack brittle, to use your ultimate. You're always going to be near enemy champions, and that's where the Immolate passive comes in, where you'll be able to deal magic damage, which gets scaled based on your bonus health. You get a lot of health anyway from Sunfire Aegis, and also a little bit more ability haste. So the more that you stay near a champion, the more stacks you're going to get of Immolate, and the more damage you're going to be doing to nearby enemy champions. It's going to be really good. Also, it's really good for pushing lanes as well, because Immolate now does more damage to monsters and also minions in the lane. For the boots, I think plated steel caps is going to be pretty good. You can swap this out for Mercury treads if you want to, if you're against a lot of crowd control. But most of the time, you know, plated steel caps will probably be the best way to go, because you can actually be unstoppable with your second ability, and if you time it correctly, it's going to be really powerful. Thornmail, again, another really strong item for Ornn, because you'll be able to apply grievous wounds if anyone attacks you, and also the grievous wounds will also be increased every single time you immobilize an enemy champion. So if you land a 5-man ultimate, they're all going to be applied with 60% grievous wounds, so they're not going to be healing as much as what they would hope for. Again, the item gives a lot of maximum health, it gives you a lot of armor as well, and the Thorns passive is going to be dealing more damage every single time an enemy champion auto attacks you based on your bonus armor. So the more armor you deal, more armor you get, sorry, the more damage the Thornmail will do. Spirit Visage, I think this can be swapped out for like Force of Nature if you really want to. Force of Nature is a pretty good item as well that could give you a little bit of movement speed, but Spirit Visage is going to be a great item either way. Maximum health is really powerful. Health regen in general is really good. Magic resist, and then a little bit of ability haste. Increases all your shielding and healing effects, which you don't really have with Ornn. Your healing effects are just going to be from yourself, like just, you know, basic health regen or anything like that. Ornn doesn't have like any sort of shielding or anything like that. This is where Spirit Visage probably doesn't come into effect. I mean, thinking about that now, you can probably just use Force of Nature instead if you want to, because Force of Nature gives you the extra movement speed, which could be very effective, especially the Absorb passive, which means the movement speed will help you get around team fights more often when taking ability damage. Gives you a little bit of maximum health and also magic resist. So I think the Force of Nature probably going to be a better option rather than Spirit Visage. And then we have the OP tank item, which is Twin Guard Armor, Magic Resist. This item is going to be so powerful for Ornn, and it's going to make him honestly into an unkillable tank. I can see situations right now when where I'm as an AD carry, I'm going to be playing against Ornn, and I'm not going to be dealing any damage to this champion. It's going to be absolutely disgusting, because the maximum stacks, you gain size, you gain tenacity, you gain armor, you gain magic resist. It's going to be absolutely disgusting. I'm getting invites left, right, and center at the moment, which is quite annoying. So there we go. We're just going to completely ignore that out. But yeah, Twin Guard, very powerful tank item that you're going to want to build for Ornn. For the runes, Grasping Undying, this is really good for trading during laning phase, really good for healing up, and really good for increasing your maximum health. It's going to make you more tankier. It's going to help you trade during the laning phase. Every 3 seconds in combat, your next attack on a champion will be enhanced. So yeah, bonus magic damage, heal you up a little bit, and also increase your maximum health. So overall, a very strong trading rune for Ornn. For things like support Ornn, you might want to go for like Aftershock. You know, support Ornn with Aftershock could be a thing. I'm very curious to see if like Ornn support might be a thing. I have to wait and see about that one. Weakness, I think it's hard to actually choose a domination rune to go for Ornn. You can maybe go for something like Triumph, which, you know, take down versus restore missing health, which is going to be a lot of missing health, and you also deal more damage. So Triumph can be good, but Weakness is also really good because you have such a strong ultimate that can immobilize multiple champions. You have your knock up with your third ability, you have your first ability which slows, which will apply Weakness, by the way, and also you have your Iceborne Gauntlet passive, which also applies slow. So that means that they're also going to be taking 5% more damage, because there's actually plenty of ways that you can actually proc Weakness for Ornn. So I think that's going to make him very powerful. Second Wind, really powerful for Ornn. As a melee champion, this effect gets doubled, and this means that you can stay in laning phase more often. As I mentioned already, you know, crafting items is going to be so powerful for Ornn, and Second Wind is going to make it even more broken because you gain health every 5 seconds. So if you walk up, if you take a little bit of a trade, if you use your brittle, try and take a bit of a trade, walk back to your tower, craft an item, and by the time you craft an item, you're going to be healing a lot of health with Second Wind. So you're going to be going back into your laning phase, you're going to be pretty much at the same health as what you were at the start of the trade, and you're going to have an item advantage. So this is going to make it so powerful for Ornn. Then you have Demolish. Demolish can probably be swapped for many different things. You know, if you want to really get full effect from the crafting, if you really want to take full effect of it, you can go for Sweet Tooth to get more, even more honey fruit healing. But I think Demolish is probably going to be the best way to go, even though Ornn is not the best at split pushing, or Ornn always wants to group and try and join in team fights. But I think with the advantage that you're going to get with Ornn during laning phase, I think you're going to be easily be able to proc Demolish quite a few times during the laning phase. And then for summoner spells, we have Flash and Ignite. Ignite is going to give you that little bit of kill pressure during the laning phase with Ornn, because as I mentioned, this champion does a lot of damage. Even though he's a tank, he still does a lot of damage, and he's still absolutely insane. And that's pretty much everything for Ornn. I think Ornn's going to be a very cool champion to play. I'm really excited to play Ornn because he was one of my main champions in PC League when playing in the Baron lane. He's just a very easy champion, very good tank to play. and this might make tanks in the Baron lane maybe come into meta. Obviously, Divine Sunder is still a strong item that does a lot of damage against tanks, but with Ornn, with all the bonus stats that you get from buying items, with the Living Forge, being able to craft items pretty much wherever you are on the map, I think it's going to change the meta quite a lot. So hopefully you enjoyed this in-depth look at Ornn. We went on for quite some time, so hopefully you learned a thing or two about Ornn. As always, enjoy Ornn. Let me know what you think of him down in the comments, and I'll see you all in a few hours for the Volley Bear guide. See you in a bit. Peace.